I'm joined now by Katherine Schweit, a retired FBI special agent and author of the book, Stop the Killing, How to End the Mass Shooting Crisis. Thanks so much for being here. Before we get into this ruling, I want to make sure we all have an understanding of the device that's at the heart of this matter. What does a bump stock do?
A bump stock is, rifles are very, like most weapons, they're very customizable. So you can change the barrels, you can change the scopes, you can put on, different types of things, including a different stock. What a bump stock does, and that's why it's called stock, is it allows you to take the stock off your rifle, add this stock on, and it has on it an additional part that you would think of like where the handle is, where you hold on to it and put your finger there. And because you can hold that in place and not have to move your hand and your finger, the rifle itself, as long as you hold it firmly, will push forward and backwards with the momentum of a discharge of a round. And your finger will tap into the trigger, continually firing as soon as it comes back to your finger. So you don't have to think or do the mechanism of pulling the trigger. So although it's not an automatic fire, it fires nearly as fast as an automatic fire if your weapon is, functioning, depending on what kind of weapon and ammunition you have in it.
So it like bumps off your finger in order to keep firing. I want to bring in on the phone, we've got Howard Schweber, a constitutional law professor. Thanks for joining us. This original ban stems from this horrific incident that happened in Las Vegas in 2017. I'm sure we all remember this, where this gunman opened fire on a crowd of concert goers, killing 58 people. It is the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history. And we know the shooter responsible for that massacre used a bump stock. Today, Justice Alito, in his opinion, wrote, quote, Congress can amend the law and perhaps would have done so already if ATF had stuck with its earlier interpretation. Now that the situation is clear, Congress can act. Howard, what does that tell you?
Well, there are so many things about this opinion that are just remarkable, if not shocking. This is among the most bizarre opinions from the Roberts Court in recent years. First of all, Alito is demonstrating what the conservative majority in general feels, which is a complete contempt for executive agencies and the executive branch. Essentially, it is impossible for Congress to write a law that will cover every possible piece of technology anybody can make up to deal in any way to make a gun more lethal. That's why historically, and particularly in the 1930s, Congress had authority to write broad laws about things like machine guns, which they defined in general terms. And even Alito admits that in the 1930s, Congress would have found bump stocks to constitute machine guns. So this business of holding the agency to a hyper-literal, hyper-technical interpretation of the phrase function of a trigger pull is just a complete abandonment of everything these conservative justices have claimed they do in interpreting statutes for years and years. They've always claimed, all six of them, that they will abide by the original understanding of the plain meaning of words at the time Congress adopted a law. In this decision, they abandoned that completely with no explanation.
And Howard, what's interesting is what is not included in the decision. It doesn't say anything about a ban on bump stocks being in violation of the Second Amendment. So what is your reaction to that?
Right, so this is not actually a constitutional law case. This is a case interpreting a federal statute. In some ways, though, that's more striking. So the Second Amendment decision that really drives all of this is Bruin, written by Justice Thomas again. And in that instance, Thomas used a mode of interpretation no one had ever seen before, which was wildly contradictory to anything the Roberts Court had ever done before, to reach his conclusion about gun rights. In this case, he was talking about statutes, not the Constitution. But once again, Thomas writes in a way no one's ever seen before, using a theory no one's ever heard of before, and an interpretive method that's completely alien to what these justices claim that they will always do. In other words, we're in a space where whether the question is legal or constitutional, it seems like for the conservatives on this court, gun cases are their own separate universe, or their own separate rules, and Justice Thomas is the arbiter of those cases.
Katherine, with the reversal on this bump stock ban that's happened today, what does this mean for the fight for gun safety?
Well, it is a challenge. There's no question that, but this is just one of many ways that people can be killed. Of course, the bump stock situation in the Las Vegas shooting, He had several bump stocks that he used. These are very wild handling guns when you do a bump stock, hold a bump stock to it. But a semi-automatic weapon, the AR-15 style weapons that we've seen in many shootings that I've worked on, you can lose 20 rounds in 5 seconds. So you can do a lot of killing with a lot of guns. And of course, as most people are aware, handguns, of course, kill more people than any other weapon. So firearms deaths and injuries are a bigger picture and problem in the United States than just one particular challenge in terms of bump stocks, but it's one more thing where we're looking for solutions and we're not necessarily finding answers.
Howard, let's talk about the obvious divide in the Supreme Court right now. We've got a number of important rulings set to come down in the near future. Presidential immunity from prosecution dealing with the election subversion charges against Trump. You've got prosecution of the January 6th defendants, emergency abortions, to just name a few. Any prediction on how the justices could rule on these?
Sure. Well, one of the things that today's decision illustrates is just how partisan the conservative majority really is. Their willingness to, and I realize I'm using very strong terms here, but it's hard to describe this any other way. Their willingness to abandon all of their prior commitments to how to read statutes or how to read the Constitution, or this idea of originalism that they used to speak about until today, really is a striking indication that they will go to very great lengths to reach the outcome that they want to reach, at which point the question feels much more political than legal. The biggest concern here is that the public will stop thinking this is about law at all and think they're just making up new versions of law to suit the particular issue that's in front of them, and today really adds to that impression. The cases going forward, coming up, as you mentioned, are highly controversial, and if they have this same kind of we're making up brand new principles to use only one time, I can't help but think that this continues to contribute to the suspicion that the court is not an apolitical body at all.
Katherine, your book is titled Stop the Killing, How to End the Mass Shooting Crisis. It's an awfully big topic, a big subject. Realistically, legally, how can we do that?
I think that it is a piecemeal thing. I think that if we think there's one solution, we're not going to get there. But if we stop thinking that gun owners and people who don't own guns are on opposing sides, and Republicans and Democrats are on opposing sides, and we think more about what individual things that we can do to reduce gun violence, that's going to get us there. I think 60% of the people who die from firearms violence, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 60% of them die from suicide. So we have a long ways to go, and the things that we see in the news are the scariest parts, but there's a lot of violence that occurs. Domestic violence is a huge percentage of the firearms deaths, and we have to look at those individual pieces, and we absolutely know the behavioral cues that we can see ahead of time when somebody is going to commit a mass shooting, which is what our most frightening aspect of what we deal with day to day. We have cues. Those are planned events. We need to report those people. We need to look for those people, find those people, help them before they try and attempt to commit that kind of violence.
Katherine Schweit and Howard Schweber, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.